All right, everybody. Thank you everyone for being here, and do feel free to grab some drinks or snacks. What you want to do. So I'm very happy to introduce to you some members of the Mass Bar Association Business Law Section Council. They're all involved in corporate and transactional law in different ways, and they're going to, I think, explain to you the role that the Mass Bar Association Business Law Council Section Council plays, as well as what they do on a day-to-day basis. So I'll leave it.
Yeah. Good morning. Thank you, Professor Owens. Thank you all of you for attending today's panel. We're very happy to be here as part of the Massachusetts Bar Association Business Law Section Council. We provide our opinions and comments sometimes on proposed initiatives and legislations that will have an impact on the practice of corporate law or in areas that are likely to be involved in the business community. So we are very happy to be able to provide that service, and we do more than that. This is one of the activities we do. We try to engage with the communities, we try to engage with the students, and we are very happy to be here. I think like what we'll do, quickly introduce ourselves, and I'll start. My name is Ariadna Caulfield. I am a partner at Rubin and Rudman. I do corporate and business transactional law with an emphasis in M&A transactions, mergers and acquisitions. I went to Boston University for law school. And before that, I worked in the Central Bank of the Dominican Republic for 8 years.
You next.
Phil.
Good morning, Phil Picillo. My bio is already out of date. I retired last month, so I'm currently unemployed, looking for employment. No, it's I'm probably the least conventional person here in terms of legal work. I started late in life, 2005, passed the bar, so I was 50 years old at the time, and just decided I wanted to challenge myself intellectually. I didn't know if I wanted to practice, but I knew I wanted to have some, kind of connection to the legal community. My background is pretty much in corporate finance and technology. I worked for many different banks, and my role at those organizations was to build and create departments that went and searched for technology, whether it was open source technology or build technology or buy technology, that we would then package, build, and resell to consumers and corporate. You're probably all familiar with direct deposit of payroll, those kinds of things. So my group built all that stuff and packaged it and framed it out and sold it to clients. And so I'm here today, maybe to give you a little bit of different perspective on the sort of legal side of careers.
Hey everyone. So my name is Ruoya Burns. I grew up in China. So I came to the States for law school. I graduated from Northeastern University School of Law. And after that, I started at a law firm called Sullivan Worcester. And then currently I am Nelson Mullins. So I have been practicing in corporate and finance area overall for about 3 or 4 years. And I'm very happy to share about any specific area you're interested in. For example, fintech, MA, debt finance, which is what I do the most now, or like overall like securities regulation. I have a little bit of similar background as Bill. I grew up in China. Early in my career, I wasn't very interested in law, or I didn't know what I want to do. So actually, I did a Master of Education first in University of Edinburgh in Scotland. I wanted to teach English in China. But after that, I decided, no, I don't feel that fits my personality. I'm always like, it's either right or wrong. So I think lawyer is a better path for me. So I came to the States. So I also have alternative paths in that aspect. So I'm happy to share about that aspect as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mason Marek. I am an associate at Locke Lord in Boston. As of January 1st, that'll be Locke Lord, that'll be Troutman Pepper Locke. But I am primarily focused in the debt finance and M&A fields. For those who don't know what debt finance is, think of it kind of like the mortgages for your house, or first like the M&A, think of that, where like you're gonna buy a business, you're gonna sell a business, there's a more like it's the financing behind that. That's a lot of what we do. So I do debt finance and M&A. Before that, I was at a boutique outside of Boston and Newton. And then before that, I was in-house remote counsel for a company based out of DC in the government military contracting space. So a wide range of experience I've had so far, even though I graduated law school in 2020. So a lot going on.
Thank you. Well, now that you have some background of who we are, what we do, we would love to have a sense of if from the audience, what's your interest? Like, if you could perhaps like raise your hands in terms of like, do you see yourself perhaps following a corporate career? Is that like something you're considering or you're curious about? And that way we can like better tailor sometimes some of part of the conversation. Do you like, for those that would like to be corporate attorneys, do you have a preference for in-house or law firm? Like, how about law firm setting? Yeah, law firm. How about in-house? In-house. All right. Government positions, perhaps, being government. Right. And some business litigation. All right, so it sounds like we are between government positions and law firms. And within that, there's a big range, smaller law firms, big law firms. So we might try to dive a little bit into that. So I will perhaps start posing a question for the panelists, and we will give you our perspective. We will make sure we leave some time to take some questions from you as well. How about Mason? If you can like perhaps share with the students, what is like the typical role of a corporate associate? You know, a young corporate associate out of law school coming into a law firm, and maybe how that evolves during the first 2 years or 3 years.
Sure. So for me, I think that it's somewhat practice dependent. So I can give you a bit about what it's like been for me. So in the M&A space and the debt finance space, your day-to-day will be working on ancillary documents, and you're never going to be tasked with like doing the primary transaction documents like for years into your career. But you'll start with like ancillary documentation. So like think about like your corporate board resolutions to authorize, like, okay, we're going to do this particular transaction. Let's do some corporate board resolutions to authorize that transaction. Or we need to put together, a lot of times what you'll see in a primary transaction document, like a purchase agreement or a loan agreement, you'll say like, here are the conditions precedent. We want you to confirm that you have all the things that you need, like all the requisite authority to do this. You have all the financing you need to do this. You have everything, you're solvent still. So you help draft those sort of ancillary certificates that say, okay, we have the authority to do this transaction. That's a lot of what we do on the first couple of years, just like work on the small ancillary things. You're getting to know the whole scope of the transaction. You're deeply involved, but you're doing a lot of the smaller things where you're like learning the fundamental skills. On the M&A side of things, more specifically, you'll be tasked with doing a lot of the due diligence, which you'll do the due diligence. Probably some have heard of that already, but that's just like digging into the business that you are buying or selling and figuring out, okay, what are the landmines that are going to possibly upend this deal, whatever it may be. So for example, there was an example in the past where it was a company that a client was acquiring where it was, oh, we think their employment agreements might actually violate, the Constitution because they are so stringent in their terms. Like that's not actually okay. We need to like get an employment lawyer here. Like, so we reach out to an employment lawyer and say, hey, how can we like, amend all of these employment agreements at once and say like, these are no longer applicable to people, or say, for example, like, oh, hey, they have a random loan they've given out to somebody. We need to know how to deal with that. Your job as a junior associate on the M&A side of things is to like spot the red flags that partners are too busy to like dig into all the details and get. And so that's been my day-to-day, but of course it changes based on what kind of practice area you're in. So I'll let the rest of the panelists sort of give their 2 cents on that.
Yeah, and Ruoya, in terms of your day-to-day, what are challenges that you feel like younger associates, younger professionals encounter in like arriving into their position, getting comfortable, starting to do the work out of law school is totally different, right? So how does it look like? What are the challenges and what things you think work and they should have in mind, maybe skills they get from law school, or how is that transition from law school to law firm or, work?
This is a very thought-provoking question. So I have to say, I mentioned earlier, I was not very ready for law school. I didn't know what I want to do. So I had a math of education. So when I started law school, I was relatively older in my class. So I thought I did a lot of preparation for going to a big law firm. I did community business clinic, which I highly recommend. If we have something similar, you can get really like real hands-on skills. I also did 2-3 internships during law school. So all this prepared me, I thought prepared me for working for a big law firm, but it's actually still not enough. I'm the first generation immigrant, first generation lawyer, and also the first college graduate in my immediate family. So I feel like I'm still very grateful even today that my law school equipped me with many resources, which I highly recommend you to utilize as much as possible. Because after you graduate, a lot of time you're just on your own to navigate. So for example, if you have first generation law student group, we talk about in the car, and even if they don't have one, great one. So that's where you can find more resource and support each other to be mentally and also just strategically prepared for working for a big law firm. I remember, so I started as a summer associate at Sullivan Worcester, which is a very reputational law firm in Boston area. And I remember during my summertime, I was confused on how the partner barely write out a full instruction email to me when they staff me. Basically, they will be like, can you check all this for me? Make sure it's client ready, client facing ready. And I was just a 12, like second year law student. Okay, I understand what is client facing ready, but you asked me to check all this. What does that mean? Should I go through the document from the first page to the last page, word by word? I have no idea how to start. So what I did eventually just to reach out to other associates who are year ahead of me. So they told me, oh, there's precedent for this deal. You can compare the difference. And then you can see exactly what changes the opposing counsel made in this draft. The partner wants you to flag all the difference for him, but then you need to write the email in a very client-facing way that he can just simply forward the email you drafted to the client. That was such a big learning curve for me. No one taught me that in law school, and no one prepared me ready for that. And there's a lot of things in law firm you will know when you graduate. You have to really ask around, dig around, and when every email from the partner is kind of like a puzzle. And then you make sure that you put the puzzle together in perfect shape. And that's because clients are paying the bills and partners are just too busy to give you the detailed instruction. So it goes back to Ariadna's question. There's a lot of challenges as a first generation college and law school graduate, but there's also advantages because there's a lot of resource around us you may never aware, like first generation law student group. Reach out to a mentor who have similar experience as you do. I remember I was connected with so many first generation law students in my law school and so many first generation immigrants as well. They're always willing to mentor me and they show me the roadmap, how to go to law firm, how to apply job there, and how to navigate. So yeah, that's pretty much my answer to this question.
Thank you. So Mason and Ruoya and myself, we have more like a traditional trajectory in terms like, we are in law firms. Phil, however, has a non-legal business background, which is a twist here. So we're hoping that we would love Phil to hear from you how that has informed your practice or your diving into the corporate practice, the way you resolve problems, the way you see and approach day to day. And we know you're not retired, but you've been doing this for so long that we can hear what do you think that perspective makes a difference or helps in the process of reaching conclusions, maybe in a different way?
Sure, sure. And good morning again. First of all, you're all here because you're curious, right? And that's the most important thing. So don't lose that curiosity. Whether it's, a career in legal or a career in whatever you choose to do. And I think, as I mentioned, I was always in business, but always tangentially dealing with in-house counsel, whether it was on the finance side, structuring deals that these folks talked about. One of my earliest transactions 100 years ago was $1 billion credit facility with 50 banks involved. So, there's a lot of stuff going on in that. So you talk about the due diligence, Mason. And so, I had exposure and I was curious. And then later on in life, as I said, I went into banking and I was always attracted to technology. Don't know why, but I was. And so that sort of drove me to kind of figure out how the legal side of this technology is going to work. You talk about fintechs, which are a relatively newer phenomenon, but the legal background formed the sort of critical thinking and provided me with the negotiation skills, because you're dealing with counsel from a technology company. And so you need to understand the business issues of that particular piece of software in order to be able to negotiate a favorable position for your organization, right? And in today's world, with open source technology and data privacy concerns and all the cyber that's out there, you have to have some level of knowledge. So I tried to build on that technology piece. And then I said, you know what? Better to sort of join than fight. And that's sort of led me to the path of going back to law school at night. And I vowed that I was only going to take the bar once. And I spent a lot of money studying, and outside resources and stuff like that. And fortunately, in 2005, I was able to pass, which I'll give you a little bit of glimpse into the future. The BBO is very, blasé about when you pass. You guys all remember, you get one little thing that says, "Dear applicant, congratulations." Doesn't even say congratulations. "Dear applicant, you've met the requirements to be licensed in the Commonwealth of Mass," period. And I remember, I just did this quick story. It's a little off track, but it's kind of how you'll realize in life. I was in Pennsylvania, visiting some clients and where my bank was located. And all my classmates were getting the letters from the BBO. And the one hint is that if it's a thick letter, it's probably not a good letter. Because when you get a thick letter, that's when they tell you where the areas are you needed to improve. So my wife calls me and she goes, "You got a letter? You want me to open it?" I said, "No." She goes, "What do you mean no?" I go, "It'll be there when I get back in a couple of days." But I said, "Is it thick or thin?" She goes, "Well, it's sort of kind of thin." I'm like, all right, well, anyways, long story short, it was a letter saying that I had met the minimum requirements. But again, my path to law was really, truly driven from an insane curiosity about technology and the intersection between technology and legal. And that sort of bode me well because, like I said, dealing with large technology shops that are global and very small mom and pops, you have to take a very different perspective on that. And, it didn't hurt that I had a lot of finance background and sort of understood the numbers, which is another, kind of thing that just sort of helps. So I'm grateful to be able to be in that position or be in that position to do that. And, be happy to answer further questions later on about, how this all sort of plays out in terms of what to do with your careers after law school.
And one big topic about after law school is how you even, sometimes you're sure what you want to do. Like if you want to go into government, you're making some connections to know the players, know the people. Law firm is like, it's a big market out there. There are a lot of law firms. So one of the things that students have some concern about is how they even start, like how they get a job or a position. Can we discuss a little bit what was our experience like finding our first job out of law school and how that goes? Usually, what do you hear? What do you recommend? Like, rule of thumb of things like to do to get yourself into a position out of law school?
So I'm happy to go first. So for me, again, as a 2020 graduate, that was a very fun year to be a graduate of a law school. But I will state up front that essentially every position that I've had so far, even since getting into law school, has not been because I just cold applied to somewhere and like I found a job posting on like UMass like or BC Law's like career services website. It's like, no, it's because I had known the person somehow, I had made a connection, and like that is so vitally important in the community. Even if there are thousands of law school graduates every year, it's still a relatively small community. So everybody knows everybody. Like even in our conversation in the way here, we're like, oh, you know this person, I've talked to them too. But that sort of was my path where it was first year of law school. My summer after that was I was a research assistant for the professor that I had that spring. The summer after that, I was with a person that I had a mentoring conversation with through the career services office at BC. And then in 2020, that first job when I was like, the market has crashed. I didn't do traditional OCI that BC does, but they knew my undergraduate. They knew I was obviously BC Law. And so the career services office said, hey, there's a person who matches your exact background and they're willing to like help you out. So like, let's have a conversation, just introduce you, see if that works, if they can make something work. And so like, I was really thrilled to be able to work as a legal fellow for Developed Technologies for a full year where it's like, hey, like it's not a traditional thing, but it's a foot in the door and you can grow your career from there. And like, they will, even if it's sort of a more transitory thing, they will recognize that they're not going to be there long-term and they will help you say, hey, I've got other connections that will help you to find your next position to move on, because we recognize that we've heard all the news reports that no one's going to stay in their job or they have like more than 10 jobs in their entire lifetime. Like that sort of model, like sticking with one firm is like not necessarily the one path that everybody follows after the fact. So for me, it's always been making new connections, whoever that is. Obviously, I'm part of the business law section council because it's giving me good connections to at least the like Massachusetts business community, which I've been really appreciative of, and I help try to like send that forward to other people who are interested. So like we've had really great conversations with the card here. I'm like trying to get our first year associates in my firm to get involved and like grow their own networks. And so if there's any sort of piece of advice I can do right now for your job, it's like no matter where you're at, first year, second year, third year law school, start networking. The earlier you do it, the better. It's only going to help you in the long run. And I know that it's scary because you think you're going to go there and you're asking for a job. Like that's not exactly, don't take that approach. Just be curious. Like Phil was talking about, like have the intellectual curiosity to like learn something new about some different practice area. Like I had zero clue what debt finance was in law school because they didn't really teach any of that kind of legal work at BC Law. And I only realized after I got into the field, I was like, oh, wait, I love this. It's all the fun of M&A without all the diligence work as much. And so like, for me, I think the intellectual curiosity and just like making genuine, honest connections wherever you can is the best way to find your job. Like, yes, still apply, still do the like job posters wherever that, but making those connections is going to be the best way forward, I think.
Thank you. Anything, someone wants to add anything else for that question?
I would just add one quick comment to Mason's point. You know, real estate, right? Location, location, location. Looking for employment, network. I had one mentor tell me many years ago, you're going to be eating a lot of rubber chicken dinners, meaning, you know, you're going to go to a lot of events and you're going to meet a lot of people. And every interaction, you want to see if it's going to lead to something. Take that curiosity and say, hey, you know, what's interesting about your position, or how did you arrive at your position? Continue to kind of, you know, dive into those types of conversations with individuals. And you all have, you know, friends, family, relatives, whatever. Find out what they do. Maybe they work at a company that interests you. And that's how, you know, I think most of, at least in my career, I was able to kind of get into different positions. And so now I'm doing this all over again, because as I said, I'm no longer employed, but I might be open to something, but I don't know what that is. So, you know, I might be going back to eating some rubber chicken dinners and talking to some people and see where that leads.
I can just add a little bit more, sorry, but I think that the easy, like networking is scary. I hate it personally, but I think that anything you can do to make that process easier is better. Like if there's anybody who is a UMass grad that you know, talk to them first. That's like, hey, anybody who's gone to your law school is going to be far more willing to help than like some random person that you cold email. Some of the easiest ways to do this is like, if you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn already, but look on LinkedIn and say, okay, search by who's gone to UMass Law School and go from there. Say, okay, who's actually in this particular practice area that I'm interested in, or what have I not seen yet? And then send a message where like you've already made a connection. Because like I know for me, I mean, I have my BC Law pride, but I'm like, I'm far more willing to like reach out to somebody or like answer an email like, okay, I guess they're BC Law. They were in my shoes. Like I know exactly what they're going through. So like anytime you can do that with a UMass Law grad is going to be so much easier. Like it's just like, oh, I trust this person. They've been in my shoes, and just talk to them. I think for me, I think one of the biggest things was just understanding their experience. If you're a first year, especially, like you have no idea what's going on right now. I respect you all, but you have no idea what the law school is actually going to be like. So like talk to people who have gone through this already and saying like, okay, what are the actual classes you took? What did you find that's actually helping you out right now? What are the clinics that you may have gotten involved with, or what are the externships opportunities that are available? Because look for the people who are doing what you want to do and talk to them, because they're going to be offer the most direct advice. Like as much as I would love to tell you you should take this class, I don't know what UMass offers. But any of those things like that would be very, very helpful. So just talking to UMass law grads will take you far, I think.
I can add a little bit on that. I cannot agree more with Mason Phil on networking. Networking is the key in the legal career. I feel overall in Massachusetts, you have to continue doing that. I remember when I was a law student in Northeastern Law, I have a suit just in my closet, my locker, because after class, I just go to all the law firm receptions or events. It's draining. You just finish a 1 day's like class, constitutional law, code calls, and now you put your jacket on to go to a network. It's draining. But I have been doing that many, many, many times. And eventually that I believe helped me to land many interviews and offers. And now I'm at the other side. Sometimes I'll help the firm to interview with summer associate. I start to understand why people love law student reach out. That shows you're interested in this firm. You're interested in this kind of practice. But also you have to think about what kind of conversation you're going to have with this specific person. It's just not like you get a chance for coffee. It doesn't lead you to a job. You have to utilize 100% of that 40 minutes or 30 minutes conversation to sell yourself and also make genuine connection. And how to do that? It's an art. And I normally will research this people's background. If I go to any single coffee shop or any meal, I'm not a native speaker. I will practice how to pronounce this person's first or last name to ensure I respect their pronunciations. Then I also research this person's prior job or their legal education background. So to facilitate a conversation, I will feel much better if a law student talked to me and mentioned, oh, I saw you went to University of Edinburgh. I saw you grew up in China. That shows he made the effort to know me. And then I will feel naturally I want to help her more. It's just people's nature. People want to help people who are interested in learning about them. So I want to share this small tip. I think that can help with some of the informational interview. And I agree with Mason, LinkedIn is very important. I didn't have LinkedIn before I came to the States. I create one. And then also, there's a term called informational interview that I learned during law school. It was so helpful. You can Google this term on just how to prepare for informational interview. Treat every single coffee like an informational interview. And always when end the conversation with whether this person can recommend you to another attorney or sharing a website or resource he knows. You have a target for that conversation, but it doesn't mean you couldn't make a genuine relationship. I have built a great relationship over the years by doing this, and we're still doing now, even as a busy practicing attorney. So I hope that this small tip can help, and I definitely encourage you to continue networking or start networking from now.
Thank you. Excellent. And if I may add something, is You never know who's gonna be like the connection through which you get a job. So be mindful of that when you're looking for a job, even if you're not having that coffee or you're even like, you're like out for a jog, you're not wearing your suit. You never know who's running next to you. You never know who's behind you in an elevator. So be mindful of that and treat everybody with respect and be curious, as Phil said, and ask questions and let them know you're looking for a job. Don't be shy about it and say, oh, I just graduated and I have this interest. If you know anyone, let me know. To anyone, you never know. It can be the grocery store. I have friends who found jobs the most random ways. So when you're looking. So always think about it. Maybe we talk a little bit about life balance and what that means. And I know it changes by industry. It changes by law firm. It changes by setting. Some people take decisions of where they want to go based on that. There's a lot of awareness now of the importance of it. So, what have you, I mean, working as an attorney, it doesn't matter where, it's hard. Even if you don't have the billable hours of the law firm, you have something similar, like the schedules, like hard hours in another setting. So, there has to be some sort of awareness of that into going into the practice. You also want to do a good job, so you put more hours than perhaps they're telling you to because you want to kill it, right? And you want to show like you're the best and you want to be promoted and get a bonus and all of that. So how do we deal, how is that? How does that work? How do we keep ourselves with a safe check? Phil, may I start with you?
Sure. I can't offer much because, again, the private or corporate sort of positions, I mean, it was stressful in terms of, building technology and all that kind of stuff. But, I've known a lot of people and I've read a lot in a lot of the legal magazines and whatnot. It is a real issue today. I mean, there's a whole LOMAP, right? Is I forget the actual what it stands for, but there's people out there that try to work with attorneys dealing with substance abuse, gambling addiction. I recently got appointed as a hearing officer for the Board of Bar Overseers, and that's the only time you want to hear from them is when you get your letter saying congratulations, right? If you get a letter from them and you're in practice, it's probably not a good thing because it's probably somebody, ratting you out and saying, hey, they did a horrible job and I need you to investigate them. But there's a ton of those situations where attorneys, unfortunately, they're humans and they do bad things. They steal from their IOTA account to fund, whatever addictions they have. So, I mean, it's important though, as I've said to all of my employees throughout my entire career, family first, job second. And you sort of need to kind of think about that. But it's hard because you're all entering the workforce, and as was mentioned, you want to be the hard charging individual, and you should, because that's important for your career. But don't always do that at the expense of your family, because whether you're single, married, children, whatever, that's your network. That's who your most important priority is at that point in time. So, I mean, it is something that is way, way more important today than I think it was 50 years ago when my dad came from the factory and went home, read the paper and went, ate and went back to bed, right? That was the work-life balance. But that's changed today because of social media and all of the other challenges that not only we face, but our children face, right? So just keep that in mind. And I know a lot of law firms do a lot of work to help attorneys and employees cope with all that, but I'm sure you folks have a lot more experience with that than I do.
Sure. So for me, I consider myself incredibly fortunate that Lock Lord Boston is really kind of known for its collegial atmosphere. We're about 60 attorneys in the Boston office out of a firm of like 600 currently. And so like we still have a sort of smaller office feel compared to a lot of larger law firms, like your Ropes and Graves in Boston, like they're massive and like you get lost in the sea of people. It's like I consider myself fortunate, but I feel like there is a lot that is different amongst the different firms. Like you maybe talk to different firms, small firms, big firms, you may be talking to different governmental departments, where like their offices are just going to be different in terms of who is in there on a day-to-day basis and how they run things. I know from other firms where I've heard where like, oh, your hair is too long, both male and female. You have to cut it before you have to come work for us. I'm like, they have very stringent requirements, like what they expect out of their associates. I'm like, maybe that's not the firm for me. But there are other times where I think that you have to recognize that being a lawyer, no matter what practice field you're in, like practice setting, it will be difficult. If it's a government job, there's like, if it's a government client, like there are so many things our government does on a day-to-day basis. Like we have someone who's on our board. She is like directly working with the Secretary of the Commonwealth, and like she is constantly working late hours. She is traveling internationally to represent like state officials in international conferences. Like that's her own, like that's what makes her job difficult. If you're at a smaller firm or mid-sized firm, you recognize that you are having to sort of duke it out to get your corporate clients, or if you're, especially if you're in a mid-sized firm, like you're feeling the pressure from the larger firms who are, like, they are paying more money for their attorneys to be on all the time, or you're fighting against people who are beneath you in terms of size. And that's where it's like, okay, recognize that no matter what sort of practice setting you're in, there will be things that will make it difficult. So taking time to step back and say, okay, no matter what the pressures are, I need to take time for myself. I mean, for me, it's as simple as I have my little mini crossword puzzles that I do on my phone, and I do my Duolingo Spanish lessons at the end of the day. That's what I find enjoyable. Like I'm trying to find creative outlets and trying to like make itself fun for me. Again, I consider myself incredibly fortunate that we do have like resources for, like we have a wellness room in our Boston office. We have like a really great collegial atmosphere, but it's finding whatever works for you and like truly actively trying to find that balance, because unfortunately, like there are times where people don't recognize they're in too deep. It's sort of like, if anyone's heard like the story of like the frog dropped in a pot of hot water, that it will jump out. But if it's the sort of pressures, right, the temperatures rising over time, they don't bother jumping out until it's too late, kind of thing. And I think just like taking stock of that and recognize, okay, am I doing okay? And like really like making sure that you're okay is really important in the practice of law.
I can add a little bit. So the culture I grew up is just hardworking. And I don't think my parents ever know how to like check on your well-being or mental health. They just know to work hard to provide. So growing up this kind of family, I didn't know how to care for myself, mentally or physically, just unless I'm getting really sick from school. So for years, I just know I need to work really hard. And during law school, I actually had a pretty burnout semester that I was too ambitious. I was in a law review, and also I was TA for 2 different classes. And I was also the chair for the Asian Student Association. And I was also wearing the suit to go to every single big law reception after class. I was so burned out. And at one point, I felt I need a professional coach. So I'm going to share the lesson I paid. Now, I hired a professional life coach because I just was Googling how to meditate and how to care for yourself. And I found there's actually a person doing this kind of job called a life coach, and actually very affordable. It's $100 per session. And she talked to me every 2 weeks for once. So 1 month I paid 2 sessions, $200. That has improved my sanity and also everything overall dramatically. And I'm happy to share her information after the panel if everyone's interested. I literally started this life coach session since I was 12. What she did has been very simple. She reminded me to build small relaxation habits into your daily schedule. For example, I will set time for relax your muscle, time for walk around on my calendar throughout the day. I would just at least stretch my muscle 4 times during the day at different times, depending whether I really follow the schedule. And then she will also ask me, like, what's your envision for the next 2 weeks? How you are going to take care of yourself? Are you going to like farmers market this Saturday? And she will always ask me, what have you done the past week besides working and studying? And that's kind of like a sanity check. I'm really asking myself what I have been doing to care for myself besides just working hard and working hard. What's this for? So after that, and now I don't use her service anymore. I think I retired. And also I already built that little habits into my daily schedule. I also learned, always ask myself on Monday, after I make through Monday to Friday, what I'm going to do for fun this weekend. And I'm definitely go to the treetop event in Camden. I'm definitely going to South Zoo Park, Franklin Zoo Park. So I every Monday I will start to plan about the fun activity to do on the weekends. I also agree the work and life balance is very important in the team you're working with. For example, I am fortunate that the partners in my group, they have kids that do not send work over weekend. So they have very organized timeline for deals. So I get most of the weekends off, which is very, very, very rare for big law firm practice. I had a job at once that I can never make plan on weekends. You have to be available on call. But now with this weekend off, I feel like I do have a lot of fun on a weekend. And sometimes even during the weekdays after you finish work, you can just build in small activity for like 20 minutes. So that's how I manage my.
Thank you so much. And if I may add something would be, think about things that you really enjoy doing outside of work and build time for that. Community engagement, it's important. You know, signing up to be a member of an organization that pursues interests that aligns with your own interests makes it easier to. It makes you set some, you know, pockets in your schedule for events that will have as a result what Ruoya was saying, get you out of the office. If you don't schedule anything, you're gonna get it packed with work and you're never gonna stand up from that chair. So put it in your calendar that will force you to get out there. And if they are aligned with what things you love, even better. So we would love to have the opportunity to give you some space to ask some questions that you, even if they're do not relate to topics we discussed, feel free to raise them, or if you want us to dive a little bit more into some topics we discussed as well. So feel free to ask any questions. Sure.
So what is one question that you either received or asked during like one of those coffee meetups that you felt that would either like move the conversation forward or just benefited you in a way?
I think I had a lot of coffees when I was looking for a job. And I think like at the end of the day, the question that made like, you know, the person I was having the coffee with get into whether or not I could perhaps have a fit in the law firm, or like there was a position was going over my experience and saying like, I would love to work at your firm. There's ever a position, would you let me know? And that's when they would see it and write down my email, you know, would you let me know? And by saying if there's ever a position, I wasn't putting them like under the gun, like, is there a position now? You know, because people don't want to say no. But if you just leave it kind of open, but you do say, would you let me know? And people follow their words, you know, they would let you know. And they would take your contact if they don't have it at that time. I think that for me was important.
I would just add, you know, you made a comment, an excellent one around doing research about the individual, right? And you want to get that individual talking about themselves as opposed to you just talking at them, right? Because then you can relate, you know, other questions, right? And then, you know, it's less about, you know, I need a job, give me a job. It's more about, hey, I'm currently exploring opportunities in this particular area. Your organization, your firm seems to have that particular specialty, if you will. I'd love to talk to other attorneys in your firm and find out what drives them into doing that. Can you provide me with some additional contact information and let that person make a warm introduction for you? And then after, you know, it's sort of like you're interviewing, but you're not interviewing because you're meeting additional people there. And it just, I think it helps broaden the scope of the discussions, especially when you get them, you know, to talk about where they went to school or what they like about their job, what they don't like about their job. Would they do anything differently if they had to do it over again, and those kinds of things. Just again, I hate to sound like whatever I sound like. I got laid off during the Great Recession in banking. I was working for Santander Sovereign. And they were fortunate they provided me with a year of outplacement. And I was in Boston at the outplacement building, and there were probably 50 people from Fidelity who also, because of the investment side, they were not working. And I left the bank on a Monday. I showed up on, a Friday. I showed up on Monday, a suit and tie, like I was ready to go to work. And I went in the office. They gave me a place to sit, and never forget this. My wife handed me a notebook with a pen, and she goes, write down every interaction you have today and keep writing those interactions down. And so I did that. And within a short period of time, probably 3 months, I had 8 job interviews. And the people from Fidelity who had been there for 2 years were like, how did you do that? And it was a lot of rubber chicken dinners. It was a lot of coffees. It was a lot of just getting to know those individuals better and, leaving it wide open. And I'll just leave the comment on this last note. I got a call out of the blue from a colleague of mine who lived in North Carolina and said, and he's known me for years. He goes, I know you and I know SunTrust Bank down in Atlanta. He goes, there's a position open and I think you'd be a perfect fit for this organization. I'm like, Rich, I'm from the North. They're from the South. They won't understand anything I say because I don't speak Southern, right? And he was, oh, don't worry. He goes, you'll be fine. As it turned out, he goes, I'm going to guarantee you, I know the hiring manager, you're a perfect fit. And after like a month and a half of interviews, I ended up getting the position and moved and relocated by myself to Atlanta, left the family up here and did the back and forth commute. But that all came from conversations and networking. And it's a job finding a job. You've probably heard that many times. It's not just something, and it's hard for people to talk about themselves in some instances because, you don't want to sound like you're the smartest person in the room. And I hope I don't sound like that to this audience. It's important to keep the network open.
And I also want to echo what Phil just shared. You have to keep on networking and also research the audience, whoever you're going to talk to. And also goes back to your question. I do have 2 lessons or 2 important things I learned from my networking. One is never be late for any coffee chat. Actually, always be earlier there. You never know who is going to give you that job. You really never know. I was late when I was a law student for a morning coffee chat that I reached out and set up. So I was very ambitious. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I had many classes that day. So the only time the attorney's time schedule can fit with mine is 8 a.m. in the morning through Zoom. But I was so exhausted from the day earlier from attending other events. I literally just couldn't wake up on time. I remember it was 8:20. I got an email asking, are you going to be in a Zoom? I am here waiting. That's a moment I feel so embarrassed on myself. I asked somebody to speak to me that did show up at 8 a.m. and I am late for 20 minutes already. So I showed up and looking just like having a rush of like just look not in a good way. So I apologized. That attorney was very kind. He basically told me, it's okay, you did this to me. He's a fellow Asian attorney. So he said, I understand I have done this when I was a law student, but promise me going forward when you attend any coffee chat or any networking chat, if you schedule in early morning or late afternoon, please show up. People are really taking the time from their schedule to do this for you. And I remember that conversation even to today. The second lesson I learned is make it easier for the person to either forward your documents material to others or make it easy for your invitation to show up on their calendar. I do not remember how many times a student reached out to me and I said, yeah, please send me a calendar invite. When I said a calendar invite means please send me invite that I can accept so that will show on my calendar. if you work in a busy law firm, you should understand how important the calendar management for attorney. If it's not on my calendar, I will just
Doesn't
don't
exist.
remember this exists. So a lot of law students send me a Zoom link, not a calendar invite. I have to really copy paste the link to my calendar on a specific time she suggested. You may think I'm lazy to ask for that, expect that. It's actually very real in law firm that we even do not have time to add on calendar. Sometimes I have to forward to my admin said, could you help to add this to my calendar? I only have 2 seconds to see that to her, and I need to go back to my deals now. So if you learn this small tips today, is to send a calendar invite, not a calendar link or Zoom link.
Absolutely.
And sorry, one last thing is that when attorney said, could you send your application documents to me? Make sure it's error-free, grammar error-free, and then put in email that if it makes it easier for you, here is a quick summary of myself and what I'm looking for. Make it easy for the attorney to just forward that if they're interested in helping you. I can't remember how many times people send me a lengthy email just to me. So I have to summarize for them and then forward to the person that might help her. That takes extra time. It doesn't mean I don't want to help them. I just don't have the time. So if you make it easier for others to help you, it will just facilitate the process much more efficient.
So I will say to Roya's point that on another attorney that I know, he did what she said not to do and sent just the Zoom link. And I, in my like busy life, didn't put that directly in my calendar. And I missed a meeting last week because of it. And I'm like, so doing anything we can to help fellow attorneys, make sure that we're actually going to all our meetings, it's very important. I will say to echo Phil's point, yes, anything you can get us to do to talk about ourselves goes a long way. Like I think for me, it's like is combining their advice along with one of my colleagues is like, if they have like a deal or something that they've done and is on their firm website, say, oh, hey, what was the most exciting thing about that? So like I have a go-to response about like a multinational Latin American deal that I worked on a couple of years ago. It was like a massive $2 billion facility, but like I know what I did and I was very excited about it. It's like anything you do, like that's important. But like to Roy's point again, also about like grammar and error free though, you're going to be applying to a lot of jobs. You're going to be sending form emails. We know, we've been there. You do the cover email or the cover letter is going to be very similar, but make sure you get those details right. Like as a corporate associate, especially a junior associate, it's form documents that you're working with a lot of times. So yes, copying and pasting may seem like an elementary skill, but it is crucially important that you do the copying and pasting correctly. And that goes for like just making sure you have the right firm name. We've got an application where it's the
Yes.
wrong firm names,
Got
the
it.
wrong person that the email is directed to. Don't do that. And like we can look up who they are so we can know what firm you really were referring to. But the one thing I've also seen is this is a very niche one, but it's one that gets to me. This is my own personal issue here. Is sometimes people will copy and paste from like, say, for example, you're typing out a letter or a paragraph in Word or something, and then you copy and paste that into an email. Well, the text doesn't format the same way, so I can tell that you just copied and pasted this from somewhere else. Or like there was one time it was a cover letter, and the font of a particular paragraph that was like really targeted at Lock Lord was a different color, like a very slightly different shade of gray, but I could tell. And I was like, copying and pasting is one of the most basic skills. We know that a lot of your cover letters and emails are going to be very similar. It's just doing the basic skills that are good for associates to learn. Is you can start working on those skills now, and it'll like go a long, long way, I think. So.
And one more item would be remember to follow up. It's very important. Maybe when you met that person that day for the coffee, there wasn't an opportunity in the radar, but you can always ask, is that okay if I follow up with you in a couple months to check in? And people are gonna say, of course, yes. So you take that, write it down. This person said yes to follow up in the spring, put it in your calendar. And then in the spring, you can like make it very simple and say, oh, I saw your law firm. How are you doing? I saw your law firm just did this fundraising. I hope you're doing well. It was very nice to meet you back then. I am still remembering like the tips you gave me. I've done this. So that person's like, oh my God, she's still looking for a job. And if they know about an opportunity at that time, it's kind of already you're tagging along to the prior conversation. All right. Any other questions for us?
So we have a lot of out-of-state students, and of course, we're located in a small city. And big cities, right? So how should our students who aren't sort of right next door to a lot of the big Boston law firms, how should they expand their networks into these other geographic areas?
So for me, this is one of the things I do want to talk about this. So for me, I think that one of the hardest things is like knowing what to get involved and how to get involved with. So for me, like I'm heavily involved in the Massachusetts Bar Association, which of course covers the entire state. And so we do a lot of like all of our meetings are essentially hybrid meetings, so you can get involved via Zoom however you want. I'm also part of the Young Lawyers Division for the Mass Bar Association. I think we'll actually be coming back here in the spring for another event. But I know that like it's hard to get involved. So like just trying to find whatever niche area it may be. Like say, for example, if you like, there's the Women's Bar Association, there's the Mass LGBTQ Bar Association. They're all people who are going to be like interested in or connected in the same sort of ways as you are. And just like reaching out to people who are part of those groups is an easy way. I know that obviously mine is more Boston focused, but like y'all are closer to Providence. So like maybe there are resources in Providence that are like, okay, we can take a bus or whatever over to Providence and like say, okay, what are they doing there? And just finding the groups that you're involved with. I think it takes some trial and error in terms of figuring out what you want to do. I know I have a really great friend. She was on the Business Law Section Council and the Young Lawyers Division with me, but she found that her interests were more in the Asian American Lawyers Association of Massachusetts and the Women's Bar Association. And it's like, great. I may not be on those sort of divisions with her anymore, but hey, I've got somebody who's in a different group that I can connect with, and they've got contacts there as well. And so like just finding any sort of group that you're interested in, and I know that seems a bit daunting, but they will love a law student. I assure you, they want to have more law students involved, whatever it may be. Business Law Section Council, if y'all want to have us back in the spring, we're happy to come back. But I will say that we want to have as many things, like if there are things that you want to publicize for the young lawyers, we will publicize that for you because we want to make those connections as well. And so it's not just that you have to come to us. We are actually actively interested in connecting with you as well, because we know that you will be lawyers one day and you're going to be in our field. And so it's good for us for networking too. But that's all.
I think I understand the distance to the city, that can be a barrier. But I think I graduated in 2021. So during my law school was COVID. So I actually did all my networking through Teams or Zoom. I think a lot of people, even now today, they're still happy to do that. I think what you can do is propose Zoom or Teams. Normally people just tend to say yes instead of like proposing back, how about we meet in a coffee shop? So just be proactive in proposing what you want first. And then if it's a very important partner or important relationship, you felt in person is better, you can do it occasionally. But I personally did most of my network call just through Zooms or Teams. I found it's the same as in person. But one thing is I did make sure that every time I talk, the background is clean. It looks just like in a in-person chat. I make sure that I show my commitment to this conversation, my attention to this conversation, just like I'm doing in person. So and also like I just mentioned a lot of like bar association really want law students to attend. I did a lot of programming just for you guys. So all you need to just show up. And there's a lot of them just sign up RSVP when the event starts, was in a Zoom link. You can just show up. If you like any of the panelists, reach out, follow up. It's by email. So I think it's still very doable. And actually I had success in doing that just virtually.
Bunch of field they have to get back to Boston apparently.
So sorry.
But thank you so much for being here. I know.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. It's great.
Thank you.